Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Jillian Bender-Cormier, and I'm brand manager with Bender Insurance Solutions. We want to welcome you to another educational BenderU webinar discussing COVID hiring and training incentives, how and why you should be taking advantage. Some housekeeping notes. At the end of this webinar, we will have an engaging Q&A session that I will be facilitating. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the chat box or in the Q&A section. During that Q&A time near the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing your questions with our speaker. We want to be conscious of time, so if we don't get to answer all of your questions, we will gladly reach out to you individually after the webinar. If you, however, have a pressing question during the webinar and can't wait for the Q&A time, we'll be monitoring the chat and Q&A sections and can share questions with our speaker in real time. You're all in listen-only mode and will remain muted throughout the webinar. This session is being recorded, and at the conclusion of the webinar, the recording link will be forwarded to you. We have a fantastic expert sharing with us this morning, and I'll allow Bender's own Roland Gillen to kick off the discussion. Welcome, Roland.
Thank you, Jillian, and good morning, everybody. I'm excited about the presentation from Rob Sanger with the CMTA. Rob Sanger is the manager of training services at the CMTA. CMTA stands for California Manufacturers Technology Association. It's an association that is over 100 years old in California. During his tenure, his team has assisted hundreds of manufacturing companies to gain access to training funds through the state of California and the U.S. Department of Labor. He is also experienced in successfully navigating the state's workforce development incentive programs, which are available through California's Governor's Office of Economic Development. Rob Sanger holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in Kingsport, New York, and has served as a member on the California Community College's Economic Development Program Advisory Committee since 2013. I should also mention that Rob is a connoisseur of fine beers and coffee. I know it's not 5 o'clock yet, but you may hear a couple analogies from Rob on how beer ties into ETP. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Roland. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today. Appreciate your time. I know this is a transitional time and a tough time for a lot of companies. So there'll be, there are these incentives that are already out there. I think there'll be more coming down. So hopefully we can keep you advised of those as well. But we'll kind of go over the lay of land of what hiring and training incentives are out there today. And then we'll talk a little bit of maybe what's coming down the road in the future. But like I say, I like to keep these presentations interactive, and I'm happy to take any questions at any time during the presentation. Last time I gave this presentation, somebody asked a question at the end, which was a good question, great question, but I wish it would have been asked earlier. I could have clarified something earlier and made it clearer for everybody. So feel free to ask questions. There we go. So what I'm going to kind of overview, I'm going to talk about the employment training panel. For those of you who are aware, it's a training program that companies like you pay into every year. If you're not aware of it, the website is www.etp.ca.gov, and it's a state agency, and it collects money from employers like you, and it goes into a fund to help companies train their incumbent workers mostly, but also their newly hired workers. And there's a couple different ways to apply for these funds. And there's a new program I want to talk today about that is really more of a hiring incentive than it is a training incentive. And that it's really exciting. And for I'll be going over just there's two main buckets I want to talk about in the ETP today, and that's the training reimbursement program. And there's two different ways to apply for that. And then there's the COVID hiring incentive grant, and there's two ways to apply for that. Both have a little bit different eligibility requirements and are quite different, but the funding, the way you apply is similar for both. So sometimes it's going to be a little confusing because they're going to seem very similar, but then they're going to diverge at some points. So I'll talk about that. That'll be probably the bulk of my presentation today. Federal grant opportunities, I'll just touch on that. There's a couple opportunities that are out right now that are a good opportunity, and I think there'll be a lot more coming down the road. And then other incentives, some of these you may have heard of already before, and the GoBiz one is the one that I'm probably most familiar with. R&D tax credits, hiring credits, and other incentives that are out there we'll touch on as well. So this is the first slide about the COVID hiring incentive. I like this one the best. My beer analogy would be a good hazy IPA, but in the morning I'm more of a coffee person, so Major Dickinson would be my analogy. Pete's Coffee, Major Dickinson is my analogy to this hiring incentive. It's a new program where you can get up to $2,000 per new hire. So the key thing is two things. You have to be in the right NAICS code. Food, ag, medical, supply chain are the general categories. But if you look down here, you can actually see the actual NAICS codes. So if you're healthcare and you start with a 62, if you're a testing lab, you start with 54. That's the actual full NAICS code. Some of these just have two numbers because if you're an ag and you start with 11, you're eligible, right? Food manufacturing, 311. Any other digits after that, you're eligible. And they even got, very specific here to toilet paper manufacturers. So they were trying to be really specific, I guess, with this grant. So the key thing for this one is, are you in the NAICS code? If you're in the NAICS code, and would be the first question, yes, okay. Then the next question is, are you going to hire anybody? So and there should be some net hiring going on. Not all the people have to be net hires, but well, I guess if you're in a position where you've had to furlough people and then you're bringing them back, that would qualify as well. So so really, if you're in the right NAICS code and you're hiring anybody, give me a call. We can try to work with it. Like I said, there's two ways to apply, and this goes to the standard training program and this special COVID-19 hiring incentive. They're going to earmark about $30 million for this incentive, but the money's going to go really fast. The new fiscal year just started July 1st of this year. This money will probably run out. Well, it'll probably run out by February of next year, but it's just hard to tell. You've got to get in the queue pretty early, or you may not even reach the point where you can develop an application to get it funded. So it's really hard to tell what the demand is right now, but I think once companies catch on, it's going to go really fast because, as I explained in a little bit, it's pretty easy to access. So NAICS code, you're hiring, then there's two ways to apply. If you're hiring quite a few people, like more than 20 or 30, then I think it's probably in your best interest to apply directly to the state. Your company will go through the process. You'll be the contract holder. You'll apply for a contract, and we can help you as a consultant, guide you through that process to get funded. And everything we do is based on your success. So if you're not successful in getting a contract, we charge you no money. If you are successful, then we charge you our fee. So it's the same thing on the back end. Once you earn the money, you have to do the compliance piece. And if your compliance isn't right and you don't get paid, we don't get paid. So that's kind of how we work. But so if you're back to 20 to 30 people, you think you're going to hire at least, you can go up to 100 people and earn $200,000 for your company. That's the case, assuming you're going to hire 100 people, which most companies aren't going to be doing probably in the next few years. The maximum grant amount is $200,000. The other way to apply, which is much easier for a lot of smaller companies, is CMTA is going to put an application in this week for a multiple employer contract where we're going to apply for $200,000, and then we're going to find companies that have smaller amounts of people within the company that are so let's say you only want to hire 10 people or 5 people. You can come to us, and we already are going to do the development work. So you don't have to pay a consultant to do this work to get your contract. We've already secured that money at that point, and we'll probably get that contract in September 1st. So you can go back 90 days from September 1st. If you hired anybody 90 days before September 1st, if that's when indeed we earn this, that was the eligible period plus 21 months from that September date. So it's a 21-month contract from the start date on, plus you can go back 3 months. So it's a 2-year time frame when you can hire. So this is even, I think, a better program, because for a lot of smaller companies, you don't want to go through this whole long process of getting a full ETP contract. You can just subcontract through us, and we are the fiscal agent as well, so we're responsible if anything happens. We're the grant holder, whereas the other case you'd be the grant holder. So great opportunity. Feel free to contact me if you're in these NAICS codes, or refer other companies, friends of yours who have companies that are in similar industries to us, because like I said, this is a fabulous opportunity to get people back to work and getting some training funds. The only thing I didn't mention on this slide is you do have to train them for 4 hours. There's a wide variety of training you can do. It can be online training, as far as instructor-led online. It can be all computer-based training, or it could be live instructor classroom. So it's very flexible that way. But only 4 hours of training to qualify for that $2,000 credit. This is just a standard slide. I know it's a little hard to read. It's about our multiple employer contract. So when you go to apply for funding with the state, let's say you have some training coming up in the next couple of years, what you're looking at is the same scenario as with the COVID pilot. You can either apply directly to the state and have your own contract with the state, and you can earn up to $500,000 with that. And we've done that with many companies, and very successful. As far as being we're the consultant, we help them through that process, both to earn the grant and then on the back end for compliance. Now, the other way you can do it is similar to the COVID pilot, is you can come through us. We have a multiple employer contract, where we usually put 40 or 50 companies through every year. And this year it's 950,000 we have in that account for that grant. And the reason the ETP likes to work with us and other nonprofits is that we have the relationship with companies, and we know what their training needs are, and we can get that money out quickly. If they had to do single employment contracts with every employer who wanted to get funded, they just wouldn't have the staff. So they use us as a way to get their money out in smaller chunks to folks out there. Worked with a lot of companies in the area. TriTools is one of the probably the companies we work with the longest in the area, but a lot of other companies as well. And it's a really successful program. So the way this program works is you do have to pay your employers a little higher wage than the minimum wage. Actually, in some counties like Alameda, it's up to $20 an hour now is what the ETP minimum wage is. And I think Sacramento, it's more like 18. But you can include up to $250 an hour of employer-paid medical and dental benefits. So if they're at like maybe $16 an hour, you might be able to get them in still with that wage. So they have to make a ETP minimum wage, and then the training is pretty broad, and they've also allowed for a lot of online training like this webinar format to train folks. And so there's special ways you can document the training. It doesn't have to be classroom instructor-led live anymore all the time. It can be web-based like this, or you can just do pure computer-based training, but it does pay a lower rate. The reimbursement rate for the live instructor classroom or live in-person classroom training is about $18 an hour approximately, and then the computer-based training is about $8 an hour if there's no instructor involved. And we have instructors that are available to do training right now if you're interested as well, funded through this program, and they can help find the instructors that can lead your online training like this, or you can do it on your own and have your own internal subject matter experts deliver the training. This is an example of the live web-based online training in some of the courses. Hopefully you can read that, the full Microsoft suite, leadership development, process improvement, time management, project management. We do have a COVID-19 safety training program. It's a 3-hour program. And once you complete that live instructor-led course, you'll be assisted in filling out a COVID back to work plan. So so you've taken into account everything that's known out there with what's going on with COVID right now to make sure you have a really safe workforce, especially tailored for manufacturing. And then you can post that certification in your workplace. So that's a great program. That does not have to be coupled with the ETP funded training, but it can be. The other thing I didn't mention is on the single employer the multiple employer contract we talked about, you come through us. On the single employer contract, you're still, if you're a larger company and you have a large training program coming up, you can still apply directly with the state for that $500,000. But there's a lot of demand this year. And so if you are interested in any of these programs, please start earlier than later, because I think the funds are going to go fast. And funding is going to be a little reduced as well for the ETP. Usually they have about 100 million. Now they're moving down to 80 million because they paid off some prior year liabilities. Plus they're doing this COVID pilot. So we're down to about 50 million, whereas in the past they would have 100 million just for these standard training programs for single and multiple employer contracts. So it's almost been cut in half, and it's going to go down more. And the reason is employers like you pay, when you're paying into the UI fund, Unemployment Insurance Compensation Fund, for the piece that you pay, if you're in negative reserves, you don't pay into this training tax. And so a lot of companies are moving to negative reserve, and then they won't be paying this tax, and then the fund goes down. So another reason to get in early to use these funds. All right, switching over to federal grants. The federal government has available funding for a wide variety of training programs, wide variety. Most in CMTA in the past, I've been involved with winning a $5 million grant where we're the the primary on it, and it's a fair amount of work. You got to find the right partners to make it successful. This last round of funding, it was earmarked for community colleges, and it was a $12 million opportunity, and we partnered with West LA College, and they received a $12 million Department of Labor grant to help advance manufacturing companies in California. And the grant focuses on the following items, and they really, I don't want to read through all these, but really the gist of it is assisting employers that really want to formalize or develop internal or external training programs and really make it more robust. Maybe partnering with community colleges, using some tooling new modules. They've got a new grant director down there named Tiffany, and she's really great, and I can connect you with her. So this is an existing opportunity. It's a $12 million grant, which sounds like a lot of money, but some of that's going to other parts. It's many different states are involved with this grant. So the opportunity in California for our piece is probably around 1 to 2 million. So it's not maybe as big a funny as it sounds, but another opportunity. I'd be happy to discuss this with you and see if it's a good fit to get a meeting with Tiffany at West LA College. And here's just a little bit of a flyer from the West LA College, and they're partnering with the South Bay Workforce Investment Board on this. Okay, the California Competes Tax Credit Program. I know that many of you are probably familiar with this through the governor's office. So the new period just started yesterday, and it's a tax credit agreement negotiated by GoBiz and approved statutorily by the California Competes Tax Credit Committee. Basically, what this is going to give you a tax credit for your state taxes, and what you do is that you have to forecast 5 years down the road. Are you going to be hiring people? Are you going to be investing in California? If you say yes to one of those, it may be a good opportunity to look at, and either one of those really, and you could also couple it with the COVID. If you know you're going to be hiring people, that COVID credit's good, and then this credit's probably a good credit for you too. And there's some significant money. They do have significant money this year. I'm trying to remember it. I didn't put it on here, but I think it's 80 million for this first period, but then there's 3 different periods. So I think they have over 200 million in credits this year to give out. So definitely a good opportunity if you are hiring folks, or you're investing, but everything has to be forward looking. If you already hired those folks, you already invested in the equipment, you already signed that lease, that was going to be your big investment, it's too late. So you have to really be looking forward. That's why I tell people, keep in touch with me. Bounce ID, if you have questions, give me a call. Just be on my list of people I reach out to, I send updates to, and then I can keep you posted on these opportunities. The R&D tax exemption is another one of those that you've probably heard of. We use a CPA firm as well, because this can get pretty specific. So if you have questions on that, Roland has the contact information for we both use the same CPA firm to run credits through for that. So the example for that would be, you're starting a new product, or you're switching your product up because of what's going on with the economy. All that time and energy and R&D and engineering time, and even some of the frontline worker time can be credited for this exemption. And then this is just a little example of I've been working with E&J Gallery Winery since 2008. Got them a large $1 million ETP contract. Back in those days, the cap was higher. Right now it's $500,000 for these contracts. Now it's back then it was right around $1 million. And so the program does change over time. As far as if there's more demand, then that the cap goes down, and then there's obviously a lot of demand right now. Then we went in 2011. And the $1 million is what they earned. They got awarded that, and they also earned it. So to earn the money from the ETP, you have to document the training properly. You have to submit the wages and the demographic information of your employees properly. A lot of people can send the information in, but there are some double checks that are going to be done along the way, especially with wages. And if you don't have the right wage in there, it could get kicked out. So we work very closely with the companies to make sure all that information is correct, so that the amount that they are awarded by the ETP is what they earn. And after they earned that amount of money, then they took a few years off, and they they participated in our multiple employer contract, which I was talking about earlier, and for around 92,000 the first round, that particular round. The next round was 156,000, and then they went back for another single employer contract for a few years in a row. And then just recently, they also tapped into some of our multiple employer contract funding. They also started an apprenticeship program that's approved now by the Department of Apprenticeship Standards in California and the federal government. And they really looked at that as an opportunity to really get engaged with their local workforce and bring in folks right out of high school or right out of technical school or community college. What they were finding is they had really tough requirements for any job, even a basic job within the frontline worker opportunities, or what they call a general worker there, working on the equipment operations. They would have like a 5 years experience. Well, where are you going to get 5 years experience just coming out of high school or technical school? But with the apprenticeship program, they were able to really engage those workers that were local and give them the training and the skills they needed as they started working, so they could bypass some of those strict hiring requirements they had. And through this apprenticeship program, they're hiring a lot more local people throughout the community there, especially in Modesto. Okay, questions answered. I know I missed a few things, so I'm hoping somebody catches a couple of things I missed along the way. But just in final summary, I guess, the key things are, looking at your training over the next 2 years. What type of training do you need to deliver? What means are you going to do it? If you are the eligibility for the COVID, we went through those NAICS code. It's not the same for the standard ETP program. If you're a manufacturer, you will be eligible for the standard program under the ETP reimbursement, where you get the $18 per person per hour reimbursement. But there are stricter requirements if you are going after the COVID pilot, as far as what your NAICS code is. So I just wanted to highlight that, because that's hard to remember. I don't want people to think that they're going to be left out because they're not in the right NAICS code for the standard ETP program. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Rob. We do have some questions that have come in. The first one we have asks if this does this conflict with the PPP loan?
From my knowledge, it does not. I have not read through all the PPP documents. Most grants, the only thing they look at is double dipping, but you can't really train somebody if they're not on your workforce. So I really don't see any conflict there, but I'd be happy to look into it if you have a specific scenario you want to send me.
Fantastic, thank you. How many times can I apply for the reimbursement?
That's a good question, and the ATP panel is struggling with that right now because, they try to, as you can see in the Gallo example, companies can come back over and over and over again, and not only that company, but it's subsidiaries of that company, right? So, and what happens with the ETP program is once a company finds out about it, they really like it so much, they do keep coming back. And as a consultant, it's a lot easier for me to work with the same people over and over than trying to find new clients every year. So it is a struggle. So there's no clear answer right now. They're just requiring the company complete that full 21-month contract, or it's actually a 24-month contract before they apply again. Because actually some companies get done so quickly, they get done training in 8 months and complete it, and then they come back again for more money. So they're trying to at least slow it down that way. There may be some new limitations coming up from the panel. The panel consists of folks that are nominated by the governor's office and the legislature and the Senate. And so those folks are they constantly tweaking the program. So for right now, there aren't a lot of requirements. And so what you see is a lot of companies coming over and over and over again. So that's why I'm trying to reach out to new clients that haven't used the program before.
Perfect, thank you so much. Another question that we have, Rob, what are the reasons why companies don't apply for these programs more often?
Yeah, really the reason is just awareness and lack of knowledge. And even right now, I find that this, I would kind of expect my phone to be ringing off the hook about this COVID-19 pilot. But what's happening is companies are just so busy that are in these NAICS codes, right, that are impacted and that are critical industries, that they just don't have the time to deal with maybe some of these new programs. So just getting the word out about the programs, getting the word out to folks that in other industries that are in these NAICS codes, let them know about it. And even if they're not coming through me, letting them know that this is out there, because they're valuable programs. And on the ETP side, like I said, it becomes a word of mouth type thing. It's not widely advertised. It's a small agency overall in the scheme of things. And so most CPAs don't know about this program. Most of your business folks that are out there advising you don't know about it that much. So it's a very niche business. So a lot of companies just don't have the word about it, but that's what we're trying to do, is get more word about these programs.
Fantastic. All right, I have a few more. If I hired a new employee in March 2020, could I still apply for this incentive?
No, March is going to be too late, because you can go back 90 days from probably that September date when we're awarded. So that's going to be too late. But if you do hire anybody else, then that person would be eligible within 3 months prior to September. And I'm leaving that there because I'm not 100% sure we'll get funded by September, but I'm hoping that will be the case.
Perfect. What types of training is eligible for reimbursement?
Oh, that's a good question. Pretty much most of your corporate training is going to be eligible. It's easier to tell you things that are not funded. What's not funded is your basic compliance, your basic CPR first aid, your basic, anything has to do with union organization or the deterrence of union organization, anything to do with law as it applies to hiring and firing, those type of things, they just don't like to touch on. So the more common things that we see are quality training, Lean Six Sigma, anything to do with using a computer to, you know, work in an office, from Microsoft Office to an ERP system, business skills, negotiation skills. That's all the soft skills that are out there that we hear about that employees are lacking. And then there's a bunch of online training like Tooling U has for CNC machining. They have specific courses where you can simulate to be on a specific CNC piece of equipment and work on that in a remote environment and in an offline manner. So there's just a wide variety of training out there, but there are a few things you can't do.
Wonderful. I think we've got time to answer a few more. We have one that came in. What are the challenges to earning the funds once awarded?
Okay, so so on both of these programs, you know, there's a fair amount of work to get funded, and then once you get funded, you're like, wow, I've got, you know, funded for $500,000 for the single employer contract, and they're excited, and then they walk away from the podium, and you know what happens sometimes, they don't have a consultant that's really helping them be on it, is they earn nothing. And the reason they earn nothing is you actually have to turn in eligible rosters, either in a paper format or really nowadays it's a scanned format, or using a approved learning management system that's been approved by the ETP. And so those are the two ways you show or document that the training has been completed. And then not only that, you have to actually take that information and then upload it to the state's database. And then in that database, you have to do the invoicing as well as linking it with the demographic information of the employees that are participating, only those that are participating. So there's a fair amount of background work, especially on just the single employment training reimbursement program. On the COVID new hire program, you know, I haven't had, the program just started. I've got 2 companies going through this month, next month in August, that are going to get funded, but it's going to be much easier. And here's the reason. All you have to do is show that they were hired, and then show that they completed the 4 hours of training, and you probably want to do that soon after they're hired. And then they have to show that they've been retained for 90 days, and then you can invoice for that $2,000. So that's going to be a lot easier, as that COVID pilot back-end administration is going to be a lot easier.
Great. Okay, one more. Actually, we have time for 2 more questions. What trends in grant funding do you see in the next few years?
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting because, you know, the government's in DC, they're negotiating right now again for another incentives package. I know the CARES Act had some money in it for training incentive programs, and we're looking at some of those as well. But I think there's going to be more specific training dollars going to be out there for companies that they can apply more directly. And I think there's going to be a great need for, it's just a wide variety of training programs, as people are laid idle really because of some industries like the restaurant industry, some parts of the entertainment industry, sporting industry. So I see that there's going to be a potential for more grant reimbursement for this type of training, online training. I don't know how those funds are going to be distributed. The Department of Labor also receives money from H-1B visa holders. We've heard a lot in the news about H-1B visas, people coming into the country on H-1B visa. Well, when they come into the country, usually it's the employer pays a large fee to bring that person in the country, and some of that money goes towards training programs to fund, you know, to upskill workers within the country, so that in the future we'd have to have less H-1B workers. So I see those funds being pushed out quicker now. I know there are some funds available, but I see those being pushed out quite quickly. So we're going to keep a lookout for those types of opportunities and partner with community colleges or workforce investment boards, or however. Typically when the RFQ comes out for these, it tells you who they want to be the primary and who they want to partner with. But we always need companies to participate and be part of that process. And it's better to have them in the front end than on the back end, because I've seen some of these grants that are just pie in the sky. They look great to the people who wrote them, but then the employers come in at the end after it's been awarded and say, we can't work with this. You know, this doesn't work for our companies. And the problem is there was just that disconnect between the employers and the people that are writing the grants. So trying to connect those two folks is another interesting process that we try to do as an intermediary. The other interesting thing we're looking at, and we're hoping to find some funding for as well, either through the state or the federal government, is, you know, a lot of manufacturers hire temp workers and through temp agencies. And when you look at a temp agency, what is their goal? What are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to make that manufacturer have, you know, baseline skills folks to get in the program or in their factory, right? But they don't really care too much about where they get those employees from, who they're partnering with. They just kind of run the numbers really, and hoping that some of those folks work out for that manufacturer and they show up on time and they do a baseline of work. We're working with some folks pretty high up in the governor's administration on taking a look at how can we play a role and work with other agencies in California with our employers to find a temp agency that will really try to bring in folks that have been overlooked in the past. So that's a new initiative that we're starting. If there's anybody who has an interest kind of being on that, on part of that process, feel free to reach out to me. We're just starting to do that work. We've talked with some folks in Milwaukee, Wisconsin that have done a similar initiative that's been very successful. Granted, it was more with larger companies like Harley Davidson and more larger union companies in the Wisconsin area. But we think that there's some areas that we can replicate there to work with local manufacturers. Because the other piece is we really think, you know, manufacturing already is a very diverse workforce, but we think we really can grow that even more and find people that are overlooked and that really have the aptitude and the strengths, but just haven't, you know, been able to either been exposed to manufacturing in the past. So that's another thing that we're kind of working on more long term.
Wonderful. And we can wrap it up with this last question. How do I contact you to apply for the ETP reimbursement?
Great. I think that should be on one of the slides, but if not, we'll be sure to add it. But my name is Rob Sanger, and email is rsanger@cmta.net. And then our organization, CMTA, our organization's website is cmta.net. And we also have a workers' comp program that we work with Roland on, and he's our advisor on that program. And so if you have workers' comp needs, we have a group program for that. Like I said, we do also have the COVID certification training program. So there are a wide variety of things. We also typically have a Friday webinar. This Friday is going to be a pretty interesting one. So check out our website for those webinars if you're interested in those as well.
Absolutely. And folks, I will be sending out the recording from today's webinar. And with that, I will include Rob's information should you like to contact him directly for more information. But thank you so much, Rob, for sharing with us today. We appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's BenderU. Along with the recording, if you are interested in receiving a copy of the presentation, Rob has given us the green light on that. So feel free to reply to my email or shoot me a message in the chat box now, and I will be happy to forward that along to you. And then again, should you have any questions that arise after the webinar has concluded, reach out to us and we are happy to help. So thank you again to everyone, and we hope you have a fantastic day.